Good morning. This is Christina Corcoran from Corcoran Marketing Group and the Energy Stakeholders of the Future. I am here with Cade Burks, the CEO of Big Data Energy Services. So, Cade, thank you for being here. Can you give us a little bit of background about you and Big Data and what you're doing?
Yes, I sure can. So I co-founded Big Data Energy back in 2013, and have been growing it as a digital asset management firm since then. I'm also my title here though is Chief Digital Officer, and I'm also the co-chair of the North American Energy Standards Board. And in that role, I do cybersecurity as well as data standards, transaction standards. So I'm excited to be here and speak with you today. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. So let me just ask you a few questions here. So with Big Data Energy, you guys process more than 110 million data points daily, which is a lot of data. So how can you do that accurately and at the same time, keep the data secure and private? There's which is a huge issue these days. Is there more that, and also is there more the utilities or the regulators can do to help you with this issue?
Oh, good question. Well, so at Big Data Energy Services, we actually process close to 4 billion data points per month now. So we continue to just grow and grow. Seems like exponential on how much data we're processing. But we utilize a total data quality management program here at Big Data Energy. And that program sort of addresses some of the real common problems with the accuracy of the data and the timeliness of the data. And we look at some actions typically around like missing data. How do you handle it when you can't get data from a utility? Sometimes you actually get bad data. So when you get bad data, that can be worse than no data at all. So what's the best way to handle that? And then how do you handle updates from the utility? So the utility may get the data, for example, a meter read that comes in as an estimate, but then gets changed later to an actual for some reason. We see different things of that. So we have processes and a program in place to address all these types of inaccuracies in the data. I would say that one area where I co-chair at NASB, my role is maintaining the green button standards. And the problem that many utilities have implemented the green button with a slight difference. And so that sort of negates the benefits of the standard itself. And so NASB does spend a lot of time with NARUC and the regulators, informing them of the standards, but it's pretty difficult standard for regulators to understand. The one thing that would be really beneficial from a regulatory perspective is if they put rules in place to say we need to follow the standard, and here's the NASB standard. We also work with a company called Green Button Alliance, or an organization that does testing of those standards. So I think from a regulatory perspective, that would be helpful. The one thing that we look from a utility for is the availability of that data and being in a secure, timely manner. And that's most important to my clients. And they want to be able to deliver innovative products based on those products. So give you an example, one of our clients has a home services business, and they look at the data to figure out if they've got an AC problem or some kind of usage problem within the home. And this has become extremely important, particularly now with the pandemic, is we don't want to roll trucks to people's houses to go in when it's really not a problem. It was bad data. So we want to be able to make sure that you've got good, clean data, that when you roll a truck and you show up somebody's house, they know exactly what's going on and what's wrong, and they can get in and fix it. So I think from a utility and regulatory perspective, that's sort of the focus, and making sure we've got good, clean, secure data. That question, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, that's really interesting. I have never heard of the Green Button Initiative. So can you give a little bit more background about that?
Sure. It was an initiative, I think that came out from a White House directive in 2008. And it was a standard that the Department of Energy and the Department of Commerce took on to do smart grid standards on how people could authorize other companies or third parties to use their data, their utility data, their smart meter data, to give to people who would do energy audits or who would be doing different types of things with the data. And so there's a green button standard that's out there. The good thing is we got the standard out there. It's implemented in about 60 different utilities across the U.S. We're primarily where electric smart meters are. And then that standard allows the customer to grant access to their data to different third parties. And so that's been a good, very successful. The issue has been, though, that each utility did it slightly different. So even in California, where they use a lot of it around their solar products and services out there, each one of the utilities has a slightly different way of doing it. So we're encouraged by our partnership that we did with the Green Button Alliance, where they actually go through and technically test that implementation of the Green Button to make sure it meets standards. And so NASB's is the keeper of that standard. So.
Okay. That's interesting to know. So I guess in Texas, it'd be really important too, because I know in the past you've told me that there's like 3 different ways you can get data, which helps the customers choosing the kind of products they want. So how do you manage 3 different streams of data? Is there issue in syncing the timing and the estimating the data, and then how are you handling the net metering?
Yes, it's interesting. Why each there's a smart meter on I think close to 7 million, maybe 8 million different consumption points on the grid today. That 1 meter, though, will go, the data will flow through a billing process within the utility. It will also flow from the utility, or from the TDSP, they call them here, to the Smart Meter Texas portal. Then that data will also flow over to ERCOT for doing settlement. And so because there's different processes from taking that data through, it gets out of sync. Some of it could be just rounding errors. In fact, in most cases, it is just rounding errors. But there are times when the data gets changed from an actual to an estimate, or an estimate to an actual, and that doesn't always roll through to the different areas. So you need to have really good, again, data quality practices there to make sure you catch when it gets out of sync, and then how to make sure you're using the correct data with all your business processes. So. Okay.
Well, and then this brings up the with the net metering and everything, with renewables and green products as the energy generation of the future. So how would you handle like 2 different streams of data and accurately and securely?
Well, yes, and with net metering and renewables and green products, there is a lot. There's an additional amount of data there, of course. So it's not just the consumption at the meter. It is actually generation occurring. And sometimes the generation is just offsetting what's being consumed at that particular meter. And then sometimes there's enough energy generated that it goes back onto the grid. And so when you get into all the policies and even down to the strategy and technical aspects of managing a green product or solar array that's on the top of a house or a business, and how much do you charge for that? So and how much will somebody pay for that? We also have to keep track, like in Texas, with there's zonal pricing, but there's also nodal pricing, and the nodal pricing is much faster and much greater location-wise. So there's 700-800 different pricing points within nodal. Those come at 5-minute intervals, and so if you've got all this data coming off of, and you're putting stuff back on the grid, and then there's real-time prices going on, and how much do you pay for that? There's just a lot of different types of data streams. It's considerable amount of data compared to the old days 10 years ago when you had 1 meter, 1 meter read per month. That was done by somebody jumping the back fence to go get it. And now we've got just massive amounts of data coming off of the meters and the pricing, and then also the renewables. So it's an exciting time. Hence why we keep growing data.
It is an exciting time, and that's part of what we're trying to do. Bring all these, the stakeholders together for the, because the future is going to be exciting with, the energy master plans to bringing, utilities 100% green, over the next 30 years, and a lot of things going on. So, what would you like to see for the future of energy?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have today is actually on the cyber side. The amount of data that we have is increasing a lot, but on the cyber side, you just have to keep up, and I think that's really difficult from a regulatory perspective, from a utility perspective, and even from your consumers who actually have some responsibility as well. So I think that's the part that I think is going to be the hardest for us to obtain. I think if you recall, there was in New York a few years ago, there was an EDI provider that lost their IT infrastructure to a hack, and one of the things was the lack of incident reporting to the utility and to the Public Utility Commission, and that results in the assumptions that, oh my gosh, everything is gone, they've stolen it, they've got credit cards and all this kind of stuff, where if you have a really good incident reporting so you can communicate quickly and effectively to the utilities and the Public Utility Commission, then that helps determine what's the right and the proper response. And I think New York's done a good job of putting in a data security agreement that helps address some of the issues that were identified during that hack. But there's still a long way to go. I think that's the biggest challenge I see with all this data, is that we have to secure it. It can be used for bad things, so we have to make sure that we protect that consumers' data and the utilities' data and customer data. So
yeah, I would agree. I mean, as a consumer, you're hearing more and more big companies that are getting hacked. So it's I'm sure everybody's had at least everybody I know has had a credit card compromised or something, or information breached from the credit bureaus or something else. So it's a big job that you guys have in front of you. So definitely an issue, no matter what kind of consumer you are.
that's true.
So okay, well, Cade, thank you so much. We'll be hearing I'm sure a lot more about your data security and advocating for the customer. So I appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
You're
Have
welcome.
a good day.
You too.